David Smith here with another flipped classroom math video. Today's topic, quadratic equations. Before we get into this, I want to remind you of one thing that's important. In fact, it will go all the way through this unit. We're going to take lots of square roots. What's the square root of 4? 2, right? Because 2 times 2 is 4. Is that the only solution? The answer is no. Minus 2 times minus 2 is also 4. So the square root of 4 is plus or minus 2. Okay? This is going to come up fairly often in this unit, and you will lose a few points if you forget the plus or minus. Okay, so let's take a look at one of these quadratic equations. X squared equals 7. Okay? Now, when we solve a quadratic equation, we want x alone by itself on one side of the equal sign. Right now, we have x squared. How do we get rid of the squared? We take a square root of both sides, so that's going to give us x equals plus or minus the square root of 7. Okay? This is your most basic form of a quadratic equation. So in general, for x squared equals some number k, we have 3 situations. If k is bigger than 0, if k equals 0, and if k is less than 0. These 3 situations have certain characteristics of their solutions. So let's take a look. If k is bigger than 0, as in this one, we had 2 solutions. We had the positive square root of 7 and the negative square root of 7. So there's 2 solutions. Now, if k equals 0, perhaps like x squared equals 0, can we solve that? Of course we can. Take the square root of both sides. Now the square root of 0 is what? 0. Because 0 times 0 is 0. So if k equals 0, we have one solution. So let's take the last case here. K is less than 0. What that means is k is negative. Let's take a look at a problem. What if I had x squared equals negative 4? What do? Take the square root of both sides. That leaves us with x equals the square root of negative 4. Can we do that? Mathematics does have a way of dealing with negative square roots, but right now we don't do that. So there are no 2 numbers. There is no one number times itself that makes a negative. It just doesn't work. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, not negative 4. So in this case, there's no solution. So when k is less than 0, when k is negative, there are no solutions. Okay, let's do a few examples. So these problems are going to ask you to find x or solve for x. The assumption is that you have a pretty good set of equation manipulation skills. If you feel weak in that area, you're going to need to do some review. So let's solve this one. We want to isolate x by itself, but right now there's a lot going on, so we need to kind of move everything over to this side, and then we'll finally take the square root. So our first bet is to minus 1 from both sides. That leaves me with 2x equals 14. Okay. Now I got to get this 2 off the x squared. I divide by 2 on both sides. That cancels that out. X squared equals 7. This should look familiar to you. Now that we're down in this form, you already know how many solutions we have. 7 is bigger than 0, so we get 2 solutions. And sure enough, x is going to equal plus minus the square root of 7. So I'd like to give you this one to try. Pause the video. It's set up a little differently, so you're going to have to think about your equation solving skills to get x alone by itself on one side. Okay, let's see how you did. Let's see, there's a lot of ways to go. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2 from both sides. I get negative 3x squared equals 6. Okay? Now to get x squared by itself, I'm going to need to divide out this negative 3. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. And I'm going to get x squared equals negative 2, and I can stop now. Think about that. How do you know I can stop? There's a negative number there. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to take the square root of that. So there's no solution. We can also write that in the following way. This is the null set. It's the set of numbers that's empty, okay? Because there's no solutions for this equation, so the answer is the null set. You might see that from time to time. No solution is just fine. Okay, let's try a little bit more of a complicated problem. I'm going to do this one, and then I'll give you one to try. X minus 3 squared equals 16, okay? If you're noticing 16 is a perfect square, notice that, because if we need to take the square root of that, it's an easy one to take. All right, isolate x. First thing I'm going to do is take the square root of this whole expression, and of that side, that will get rid of the parens with the squared. So it leaves me with x minus 3 equals, square root of 16 is 4. What else do I need to put there? That's right, the plus or minus, because negative 4 squared is also 16. So I picked up a plus or minus here. Now that's going to influence everything else I do. Let's finish. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I'm going to get x equals, and I have two things to do now. So I'm going to branch it, 3 plus 4, and I have 3 minus 4. So whenever you have a plus or minus, not all the time, but on these simpler ones, you're going to have a branch, because you're going to have to solve for the plus one and for the minus one. So this one is going to be 7, and this one is going to be minus 1. So if we want to list this in set notation, we would do it like this. Okay? You could also just circle your answers like that. Similar type of problem. The result's going to be a little different, but go ahead and give it a shot. Pause the video. Okay, let's see how you did. Like the last one, I'm going to take the square root of both sides to get rid of that squared. That gives me x plus 2 equals plus or minus root 11. I'm going to ask you to resist getting out your calculator and finding out the decimal approximation for root 11. You need to get comfortable leaving roots in your answer. You're going to need to simplify your roots, reduce them, put them in simplest form if you can, but the parts that won't come out of the root, like as an integer, you leave in the root. And we'll do a couple more of those later to show you exactly what I mean. Okay, finishing up, I'm going to minus 2 from both sides and get x equals negative 2 plus minus square root of 11. Now since I just told you don't turn that into a decimal, then we're not going to branch this one. We're going to just leave it exactly like that. The solution to this is negative 2 plus or minus root 11. Let's do a couple more. Try that one. All right, let's see how you did. First thing I'm going to do, divide out my 2. I'm going to get x squared equals 25. Now you're probably jumping up and down because this is a nice simple one. I have a perfect square there, so I can take the square root of both sides and get plus minus 5. And I'm done. Give that one a try. Okay, let's see how you did. I'm going to take the square root of both sides just like before. I'm going to get x plus 4 equals plus minus 4. Move my 4 over. Now I have to branch because I can deal with 4. So I get x equals, one of them is going to be 4 minus 4, which is 0, and the other one is going to be minus 4 minus 4, which is negative 8. So our solution here would be 0, comma, negative 8. And I'm okay with you circling something like this. Some people also like to go like that. All of that is fine. Okay? Just remember, on a test or quiz, clearly indicate your answer. Best way to do that is to circle it. That's what I have for you today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give me a like down below. You can also subscribe.